So Compass Real Estate, one of the largest real estate companies in America, one of the most valuable based in the stock market, the one that doesn't pay federal taxes, announced their new technology. They are a technology forward company that's going to take on the market, and their new innovation that's really going to change the whole marketplace is they're going to have a book of their listings in their office. Hey Compass, this is 1990s calling. Your market plan kind of fits with us. I think that the way they market this just shows how twisted the concept is and how desperate they are to make it look like it's something special. So Compass Real Estate, you may be following, has this new concept, which is we're going to make our listings just for our agents first, kind of hide them from the market. We're going to tell the sellers it's for them, but reality is it helps them double in their listings. They make more money by selling to each other. The company, of course, makes more money by selling it to their other agents. And so they tried to kind of pass it off as a new technology. Here's Compass to debut physical in-office book of private listings. There's a picture of their founder. This is on Inman, which just fawns over them because why? To get Robert Refkin, the CEO of Inman, to go to events, to sell tickets to their events, they've got to give him positive press. So they make this actually sound like some sort of new innovative technology. And they go retro with their book. Now, I left off here. I wanted to have in here specifically a link to Compass's value statement as a company, because I just think it's really funny that as a company, they're going to state that they're committed to high technology, right? And so I have this on my. I don't know why all of a sudden my computer is just not moving very quickly. My internet access. Anyhow, Compass in their value statement on their website, like most companies, has values that mean nothing. There says Compass is building the first modern real estate platform. They're the only one with a book pairing the industry's top talent with technology, including a book, to make the search and sales intelligent and seamless. Seamless out of the fact you have to go in the office to get the book, and here's another insight that Compass is talking about. They're going to offer the book on this newfangled thing called the internet and share it amongst their offices so that you can go to one office and see the listings in other offices that are unique to their book. And this gets passed, nobody's laughing at this, like nobody but me, I guess, is even questioning. Maybe this isn't so innovative. Maybe this has some technology forward. Now, I will say there was an article in Housing Wire that almost criticized them. Almost, not really. If you read the article headline, it says, "Are private listings and fiduciary duty truly opposites?" Now, in every business but real estate, you can't be a fiduciary and be on both sides. Like if you're an attorney, you can't have both the husband and the wife and represent them, or in a civil matter, you can't represent both sides. Even the same firm can. Oftentimes, if you've ever had a law firm, they'll do what they call a compliance check, or there's another word for it, to see if there's a conflict check, to see if they have their firm or the partners have cases with people you're involved with. And only real estate to carve that out. Now, the one reason is some cases, occasionally, very rarely, does the seller best served by the agent also having the buyer. Maybe it's an odd property, small property, difficult situation to sell, different situation. That's not the mass normal. So here's Housing Wire. They actually have an article, but they don't mention Compass by name. God forbid that they would make Compass look bad, because Compass, I'm sure, advertises with them and buys tickets to their events and goes to their events and helps them sell out their events. So they got to play along as though something is actually normal about the idea of taking your listings and not sharing them with the marketplace and telling the seller that's to their advantage. Again, I have a problem if you want to have a private listing off market. And if you can convince your seller that you're more robust in there. Here's the problem with the way Compass is doing it. They're going to show it off market as exclusive, then be able to put it into the MLS and claim it's not been on the market. Well, think about that for a second. Imagine you're a buyer and you go into a Compass office and you want to see a property that had been exclusive and that day became a new MLS listing. Was it not on the market for maybe 2 months before, a month before? Does the agent tell you, hey, it really was on the market, even though it says first day in the market in the MLS, we had exclusively for 2 months? Do you tell them that? Doesn't that hurt your seller if you get that information out? If the same buyer walks into another company and it's new in the MLS, they don't know that it was privately listed by Compass for 2 months. So the whole thing is to trick that buyer into thinking it's a new listing when it's not. But how does Compass handle that for their customers that come to them? Do they lie to the buyer and cheat for the seller? Or do they tell the buyer the truth and undermine the whole premise of this program? This whole thing isn't very well thought out. It's just a gimmick that they're using to justify to greedy agents and to greedy sellers who would make more money. It's been around since I've been in this business. There's nothing new about it. And I would say in the long run, it's going to work. It's not going to last. It's not going to be successful. It's certainly not going to help customers. One of the things I've learned, I saw interviews today with CEO of Google. And one of the things he said was that they always feel that the key is to help the customer and the monetization will take care of itself. And this is the opposite. They're trying to find some way to make more money and then somehow they're going to convince the seller that this makes sense. And it just doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, so that said, how's the market today? Well, mortgage rates in a real estate market, there's two key factors, the buyer and the seller, are demand and supply. And the buyer side demand is based on interest rates. We can see rates today are still below 7%. For all the talk of the drama in the economy, it's amazing how stable rates have been, particularly in the last month. I mean, the interest rates are more stable than they've been at any time in the last year and maybe the last couple of years. And it just shows you how the talk in the news about the anxiety in the market, a lot of that just isn't true. And we saw the stock market go up and down and back where it was. A lot of that's just manufactured political news, I think, to drive people crazy. But interest rates are still at a rate that will cause buyers to want to buy property. Now, inventory continues record lows. If you look at this graph, and this one's really interesting, it is the inventory is above the other COVID years and still below the pre-COVID years. And so what that tells us is the market still has not recovered from COVID. We still have less inventory than we should because we didn't build enough houses at that time or didn't have enough stimulation, or money that should have gone to home buyers was pocketed by Wall Street and international globalists and fraud. I think that's part of the money. So that money's not there to buy the houses rather than just anxiety or some emotional factor. But we just don't have, we have more houses, slightly more than last month, not as many as we had pre-COVID, more than any COVID period. So the market still has a ways to go to continue, and these irregularities in the market still exist. The market is somewhat localized. Los Angeles, our market still a slight seller's market. According to Altos Research, we are at a 37, which is a slight seller's market, almost rolling down. Ooh, just, you know what? Since I refreshed this, it went down to 36. So it's a slight seller's market. During the COVID period, we were in the 43, 42 range. It's been 39, 38 most of this past year, and it's getting a little more equalized for buyers, but still a seller's market overall. Okay, so let's talk about news for the real estate industry. And one of the interesting news items is, this shouldn't surprise anybody, court orders say the LA homelessness services are extremely broken. Imagine that. We have a mayor telling us that she's doing a great job. We had a governor telling us he was doing a great job until this week where he said we're not. But the court says we're not. And one of the fascinating things when you read the article, this is in the LAS, which is a great source, LAIST.com. They also have a podcast, that the city's not even providing numbers of how many people are homeless, which just tells you they don't really care, right? I mean, if there's one thing that you do in business about that you care, if you're selling hamburgers, you count dollars in the till or hamburgers sold. You don't say, well, I don't know how many we sold, but we think sales are really good today. A homeless thing is clearly, it's not about solving the homelessness. It's a program designed to pay the politicians and their friends and family and their political allies. And so the court just exposed that they're not even counting how many homeless were there, how many houses were built, how many people moved into those houses. All those numbers you would think, and especially in a government program, would be lined out. You think they would have people, they're paying people to know those things, and they don't. And so it just tells us the whole thing is being mishandled. Speaking of mishandled, I don't know about you, but I keep watching the wildfires and wondering if ever we're going to rebuild those houses en masse. Interesting story came up today that the Coastal Commission is basically saying to the owners of the lots that burned down on the Malibu coastline side, they each have to spend $3 to $5 million to upgrade services, to pay for new sewer because they used to be in septic. They have to pay for electrical lines and different zoning requirements, and all those costs are being passed on to the owners of those lots as they rebuild. So if you want to rebuild the same house you had before, you're not going to be able to. It'll have to be higher standards, but more importantly, it's going to cost a lot more money in city services as well, about $3 to $5 million more per lot, and that's why nobody's built yet. One of the other interesting stories I heard was Grant Cardone, who's a national coach, national best-selling author, and he said that he's been told he has the last house that was built still standing on the Malibu side, one of the few. Everything was burned out. His house was singed, but still up and livable. That he believes the whole thing is going to be condemned by the state under eminent domain, and that way they can build something that they want to build, either a beach or some sort of, low-income housing or some sort of city program. So again, pay attention to that, because there's nothing good happening there in the near future on rebuilding. Okay, on news, for the last year we've been following this national lawsuit that reorganized every single residential purchase contract being written in America, basically. And at the time, I said this is only being done to line the pockets of the politicians and the attorneys. Nobody else is going to see a nickel out of this. The attorney, who's basically a politician, said the reason we're doing this was because real estate agents' commissions were too high, and that was the sob story that the fake seller had, who was a plaintiff in this case. I should say they weren't fake sellers; they were selling, but the whole fake story that they were cheated, misled, and the commissions were too high. They were shocked to find out how high they were. Well, it turns out a year later, now we have real data, and commissions haven't changed as a result of this reorganization. There's two interesting news stories that came out this week. One is the Federal Reserve had a study that compared states that had this methodology in place and not, and said that there's been no change in the commission structure at all that could be documented. In fact, if anything, it slightly went up during the time period, and not maybe for that reason, but they are saying that there's no indication that this change affected commissions by lowering them for consumers. But it's because most buyer's agents don't make that much money. They do make a lot of one transaction, but they might work on 10 or 20 transactions to get paid for one. And so it's really, the whole thing is just a misunderstanding of it and demonizing a certain group of agents. Another study, even by Redfin, no big fan of real estate agents in my book, they said that the buyer's commissions are basically unchanged, slightly even higher. Again, they quantify it at 2.37 to 2.40. I'm sorry, 2.43. Where was it here? 2.40. So slightly, it's in that range constantly. But the point to make is it really hasn't changed substantially. And so we have all this drama. Virtually every real estate company in America had to redo their contracts. All the associations had to redo contracts. Millions of dollars spent, tens of millions of dollars. None of it spent to educate customers. None of it spent to help people save money and buy houses. None spent to build a house. Lots of money, I think hundreds of millions. I think $350 million in attorney's fees. And the end result is nothing. We demonize the buyer's agents. At the end of the day, the economy proves that they're worth what they're getting paid and not much less. Okay, and then speaking of, I think, dishonest reporting, one of the keys of that always is Zillow. I don't think you would notice this, but I have the trained professional. I'd help you read the news. This is an article being reported where is this being reported actually? Spectrum One News. What happens is Zillow puts out these reports and they syndicate them, and then other people kind of, because there's no real market for the news, and Zillow advertises all these places, these people replay or republish Zillow's surveys and studies as though they're gospel. Fewer people buying homes despite increased inventory. Now, it's interesting, for the last year or several years, we were told the reason why buyers can't buy is there are not enough houses for sale. If only there were more houses, then buyers would have more choice and more would buy. And that's not happening now. Inventory has been increasing, slightly, but increasing over the last few months. And sales are dropping. It's not because of the inventory. So what is it? Well, the economist for Zillow. Now, economists, I was considering being an economics major in college. I took 4 econ classes, decided I didn't want that career, mostly because most of it was nonsense. And here's a perfect example. Zillow's economist, and I use that in scare quotes, says the reason why homes aren't being bought is economic anxieties disrupted the start of the home shopping seasons, disrupted the start. Didn't disrupt the whole thing. So what was the start of the buying season? Well, they're going to tell you January 20th when Trump was inaugurated, scared everybody out buying houses. And then in April, many houses didn't know what was next for their jobs, investment portfolios, or budgets. This kept some buyers on the sidelines waiting for clear economic signals before making major purchases like a home. So what they want you to believe is there are people who make enough money to buy a house, have enough money for the down payment and to buy the house, but aren't because of their anxiety over economic news. Now, the economic news should read stock market's a little above, up for the year to date. The economic news should read inflation down. Of course, if you're politics, there's been all kinds of drama, but the actual economic news. But I don't believe buyers really make decisions to buy a house or not based on watching the latest news on CNN and being scared. If your goal is to buy a house, you make enough money to buy a house, usually it's you get a raise, you have some money set aside, somebody dies, somebody's born, something happens that causes you want to buy, and you make that commitment. And so the idea that an economist at Zillow would say the reason people aren't buying is anxiety about the news. It's just so dishonest, right? Now again, Zillow is like 97% registered Democrat. It really is an arm of the Democratic Party. So they're using this to both hurt Trump, and then their whole thesis as a website is that scared buyers will rely on them. Scared agents will buy their advertising. Scared sellers will turn to them for information. So it's an idea that they really make more money scaring people than educating and telling the truth. Is the truth the reason people didn't buy in January was because of anxieties about the economy? I don't think so. I never met a buyer who said to me, hey, we've waited for 6 years to save enough money, and I got married and we're ready to have a kid, but I'm going to wait because I'm anxious about the economy. I've never heard those words. And that happened again in April by coincidence with the tariffs and all that? Absolutely not. The whole thing is just nonsense. That's Zillow. Rather than educate and use their power for good, they're going to scare people into using their service and buying their advertising, and they're going to bully companies who don't go along with that. So again, I just think it's really sad when you see a company that has such obvious bias and is using it against the benefit for their customers. At the end of the day, the most important thing, I believe, is serving your customer. If it's educating them, tell them the truth. Tell them what's really going on. I think I've done that. If you have questions, let me know. If you think I'm wrong, tell me. I'm more glad to respond. I get responses every week via email or comments on the YouTube. I'd love to get that. If you'd like to subscribe it, if I can help in some other way, please reach out. As always, I'm Bill Gross. This is my weekly real estate update. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.